I'm honored to welcome two student journalists today to share their stories as we celebrate the impact that student journalists are having across the country. Student journalists are journalists, period, and our communities need more of them. Northwestern Medill research shows us that there are somewhere around 1,700 to 1,800 counties in the country that are at news deserts or at a high risk of becoming a news desert. The Center for Community News at the University of Vermont estimates that of those counties, there are 1,300 colleges or universities located within or adjacent to one of those news deserts. And yet, there are only about 70 colleges exploring university-led reporting programs. So imagine the potential for our communities and our entire democracy if we could unleash the power of student journalism in even a fraction of those places. Every community could have its own model based on its unique constellation of needs and the resources that are already available. Student journalists are journalists, and a growing number of them are already filling the local news gap for millions of Americans, winning awards and holding power to account. There are already an estimated 3,000 student journalists publishing more than 11,000 stories in local news outlets just last year. For millions of Americans, a primary source of local news and information is likely to originate from inside of a classroom, and the quality of that reporting can be game-changing. Last year, we saw student journalists jump into the fray to report on the recovery from major hurricanes in North Carolina and in Florida. Student journalists at Northwestern and Stanford broke stories that powerful people try to keep a secret. And we've seen essential community reporting from places as diverse as southern Missouri to Washington to Mississippi. Student journalists are journalists. They deserve the same access as any other reporter to legal advice and to guidance for their sophisticated accountability and investigative reporting. You'll hear how counsel from organizations like the Student Press Law Center is essential as our next speakers have to navigate the legal system in the same afternoon that they have to finish their homework. The newsrooms that train and support these journalists deserve the same access as funding and resources as any other newsrooms. And 8 student newsrooms were recently granted awards of up to $100,000 from Press Forward's recent open call. At Knight Foundation, thank you. At Knight Foundation, we are shaping a journalism industry that is worthy, truly worthy of these students' talents and the future that they are shaping. Because student journalists are journalists, period. And you're about to hear from two of the best. They are fueled by a sense of mission and a clarity of purpose that would be admirable at any age, and we're lucky to hear their stories today. Our industry needs more of these reporters. Our country needs more of these reporters, and these reporters need us. So thank you for listening. First, Charlotte from Dartmouth will share her story, followed by Vivienne from Florida.
Hi there, my name is Charlotte. When I was 16, I founded a club called Teens for Press Freedom. You're welcome. No, but seriously, I did. In the height of the pandemic summer in 2020, I took an intensive with PEN America and became really interested in issues that had to do with free speech and free expression. And I was also energized by our political moment. I have a distinct memory of watching CNN reporter Omar Jimenez be arrested live on camera while covering a Black Lives Matter protest. And this club got me interested in the issues of my generation's relationship with truth more broadly. I began to see how warped our relationship with news was, how our political conversations mirrored the dogma and the polarizations of our online relationships and our online conversations. And Teens for Press Freedom became successful in its way. My co-founder and I wrote an op-ed about it in the LA Times. We went to a conference in Iceland and gave a talk about it to a collection of women leaders. But I left that behind when I went to high school and decided when I got to college to become a reporter for my school paper, the Dartmouth. And this is what I was thinking about while I was zip-tied in the back of a van on my way to the Lebanon County Jail on May 1st, 2024. I had gone to the campus green earlier that evening because other editors of the paper and I had heard that pro-Palestinian groups on campus were looking to set up an encampment. As the head of the news section at the time, I was the obvious choice to be the lead reporter on a topic like this. I was there with a photographer named Dre. We spent hours on the green, frantically texting live updates to our editors in the newsroom across the street. It escalated as it had at campuses across the country. I'm from New York City, so I was acutely aware of what was happening at Columbia, and it looked like that for us as well. There were state troops with riot gear, guns, batons, facing a wall of protesters who were protecting the encampment. But my photographer and I felt safe there that night. We were there with other members of the press. There were reporters from the Valley News, our local paper, the Boston Globe, and even a member of the Dartmouth communications staff was standing right next to us. Dre was lying down in front of me, filming history professor Annalise Orlek be thrown to the ground and arrested in the distance. When she stood up, I guess she got too close to them because they started to take her despite the fact that she was identified as a member of the press. I have this clear memory of this moving forward and a moving back. I could tell physically that it would be easy for me then to merge myself back into the pack of journalists. But Dre was someone whose stories I had edited. She was a friend. So I moved forward and I said, "Don't take her, she's a member of the press." And that's when they took me too. They put us all in the van in the first round of women to be taken to the jail that night. Professor Orlek, who's a professor of protest, the history of protest actually, led songs like "This Little Light of Mine" and "We Shall Not Be Moved" in the van on the way to the jail. We spent about a total of 30 minutes in the holding cell that night. We each got our mugshots taken. I used a jail bathroom, which was weird. It has no mirrors and no soap. And I remember saying to the bailiff on the other side of the cell, "I shouldn't be here. I'm just a student journalist," because I thought that would mean something to her. But we were both charged with criminal trespassing. The editor-in-chief came and paid our bail, and we were taken back to campus. The next week was the most alienated and lonely I've ever felt. My bail conditions stipulated that I wasn't allowed to walk across the campus quad. So I spent the whole week biking 2 inches away from the green on my way to class, sitting across the street, watching people play Frisbee, eating lunch alone. And I kept thinking, they had no right to arrest me. I was incensed. And it turns out they had no right. The prosecutor dropped the charges about a week later. And I keep thinking to myself that I'm the same person who I was trying to protect at 16. I was right about the importance of a free press then, and I understand it even more now. When I was a teenager, these issues felt merely theoretical to me. They were distanced. I saw the importance of a free press as merely a vehicle for the success of other social justice movements. I saw that whether it be gender equality or racial equality or gun control couldn't succeed without a common reality based on the facts. But now the importance of these issues to me is lived, as I'm sure it is for many of you. And I'm going back to work. I'm still at work. I actually have my changeover ceremony to become editor-in-chief of the paper tomorrow. But it's not off the record until tomorrow. So yeah, I'll be looking for you all to hire me in 2026. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Thank you.
Hi. So, little story. On October 10th, 2023, I found myself at a vigil for Israel at the University of Florida. I was equipped with just a camera and my phone to capture some B-roll for my television production class. When I went to a corner, looked down at my phone for a moment, and I heard a loud bang. The next thing I know, over 1,200 students began running in my direction after they perceived that loud noise to be gunshots. For a moment, I ran alongside them until it hit me. Everyone needs to know about this. Unaware of the possibility of what running back to the scene meant, I ran back. I hid in a bush, and I started making phone calls. Still, even in the midst of mayhem, there was a part of me that felt like a fraud. I didn't feel like a real journalist for most of my collegiate career, until recently. You see, for most of my life, I struggled with my self-identity and worth. And a lot of that came from the fact that, I grew up being the family translator. My mother, who immigrated from Cuba, struggled to learn English throughout her entire life due to her severe dyslexia and chronic health issues. I grew up below the poverty line. I was a part of a marginalized group. I still remember in 3rd grade spending Christmas that year at the Salvation Army. My mom, brother, and I had been fleeing a vindictive landlord. That was the first time I was homeless, but not the last. So fast forward to high school. It had really hit me throughout my sophomore year, the circumstances of my life and the cards that I had been dealt. I will spare you the grim details, but I remember an instance where I had experienced near death. And I remember as I laid on my bathroom floor, the first thing that came to my mind was the first time I had Neapolitan ice cream. I know. I must have been 3. I had ran from my apartment after hearing my parents arguing. It could have been about the drugs my dad was selling. It could have been about me. I don't know. All I know is that when I woke up from that bathroom floor, I thought about that girl and how much she wanted to live. I thought about that girl and how much she wished she could scream into the world and tell everyone what was going on with her life. All these struggles, all this heartache, all this knowledge that she had carried with her, it hit me. I could do it myself. Eventually, through my junior year of high school, I began doing musical theater as a sort of escape, when even my escape became my place of ridicule. My peers began to sing songs to me insinuating that I had lived on Miami's Skid Row. But guess what? This Skid Row, homeless, poor girl wanted to be a journalist. And that tenacity is what got me through high school. It's what got me through community college. And it's what eventually led me to transfer to the University of Florida. I won't lie, for the first 2 semesters, I still felt a little alienated. I struggled to find other students like me who were first generation, who were working 2 to 3 jobs to send money back home to their parents. Until eventually I was hired by the independent Florida Alligator as a general assignment reporter. And then eventually I had upgraded to do student government reporting. I learned the ins and outs of my school's student government and began doing mini investigative pieces. Fall 2023, I took a break from the Alligator, and that's when I found myself at that vigil with my shoes flown off in the middle of a stampede. I didn't quite grasp what had happened and what I had accomplished until the next day when my editor, Ted Brightus, called me. And he told me, Vivienne, I just want you to know there were 5 to 10 reporters scheduled to report on that vigil. The second chaos ensued, everyone ran, but you, for whatever reason, ran back and you stayed. If you didn't know it now, just know you are a journalist. Thank you. Several months following that, pro-Palestine encampments began happening on my own college campus. I spent days and nights, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 26 hours at some point, on scene, prepared for the moment where I would encounter state troopers, police officers armed with batons and potentially with tear gas. Eventually, 9 protesters were arrested, and I followed their cases for over half a year. I dedicated all that time to extensively make sure that I fairly and accurately reported what was going on my college campus. Come summer 2024, I found myself in North Carolina with the Raleigh News and Observer as a politics intern. Thank you. And I oftentimes after work to sort of unwind would go on a run. So come July 30th, and I had come from a run as usual, drenched in sweat, ready to unwind, make dinner, call it a night, when I got a call from Ted Brightus in Florida, and guess what? My own university president resigned, Ben Sass. And if you know, you know. That's all I'll say. You know, I remember immediately just stopping what I was doing and then writing a brief and publishing that through the Miami Herald, but knowing deep within me that that wasn't the end to the story. That wasn't the full extent of what had gone on. And for the next 3 to 5 weeks, my editor and I dedicated our nights to speaking with top donors, faculty members, people who had been close or previously worked under Sass's tenure as president, until eventually I published the second piece of the Alligator's investigative series, detailing the full extent of what had gone on with Sass, and for the first time in my life, I got to experience what it meant to have a national headline, but also a full inbox. And it was such an interesting experience because I remember the next day after that article published, opening my laptop and not only getting all these emails full of tips and people thanking me for the service that I had done, but also people reminding me once again that I wasn't just a student who had done a little hit piece. I was a journalist, and that meant something. And I realize now just what a blessing it has been to have received the unwavering support that I've gotten at the University of Florida from my editors and faculty. What a blessing it is to have accomplished everything that I have done. How powerful it is to have created change through the simple power of a pen and paper. And overall, the power of student journalism. And I thank you all for sharing that power with me today.